Think there are no more secrets left on the world map? You are sorely mistaken. There are 13 islands that humanity has chosen to forget. Ships do not go there. Planes do not fly there. Any attempt to set foot on their shores ends either in prison or in a painful death. Watch closely. The last island on this list is so horrifying that even nature itself has abandoned it. Imagine a place on Earth where time was rewound back to point zero, to where the planet was just being born. We begin our list with Iceland, but forget the tourist waterfalls and cozy lagoons. South of the main coast lies a black, gloomy piece of land that looks as if it were drawn with charcoal on the blue canvas of the ocean. This is the island of Surtsey, and this is perhaps the only place in the world that has the official status of a planetary laboratory. Tourists are strictly forbidden to come here. Divers cannot sail here. It is even forbidden to fly low over the island, lest, God forbid, dust from the plane's landing gear shake onto this land. Surtsey is the most strictly forbidden zone, created for the sake of science. The history of this place began on November 14, 1963. Icelandic fishermen noticed strange smoke over the water and thought a ship was on fire, but there was no one to rescue. The ocean was literally boiling. Before their eyes, a volcano was rising from a depth of 130 meters. The eruption lasted almost 4 years. Lava solidified, waves smashed it, fire poured forth again. In the end, when the smoke cleared, humanity received a gift, a completely new island. Scientists around the world froze. This was a unique chance to see how life appears on a dead planet, how absolute nothing turns into something. The island was immediately declared a strictly protected nature reserve. Surtsey became a giant petri dish, a sterile test tube in the middle of the Atlantic. The task was simple: observe how nature colonizes the land without the slightest help from humans. The visitation rules here are stricter than in an operating room. Only a tiny group of scientists is allowed onto the island once a year. Before landing, they undergo complete disinfection. Clothes, shoes, equipment, everything is sterilized. Pockets are checked for any stray seeds, crumbs, or spores. Any outside organic matter is a biological contamination that could destroy the frequency of a half-century-long experiment. Scientists sleep in a single small house, and all their waste is hermetically sealed and taken back. Nothing must remain, absolutely nothing. But the human factor is the most unpredictable variable. And here we come to the story that became a nightmare for biologists. A few years after the island formed, botanists surveying their domain froze in shock. Among the mosses and lichens, which were barely claiming millimeters of life from the stone, a tomato bush was proudly growing green. This was impossible. Birds don't eat tomatoes. Wind couldn't carry tomato seeds across the ocean. The plant looked like an alien monster in this fragile ecosystem. The investigation was short. It turned out that one of the scientists during a previous expedition had violated the strict protocol. He needed to use the toilet and decided to relieve himself right on the cooled lava, too lazy to return to the base. And before that, he had eaten a tomato sandwich. Human carelessness became fertilizer, and a seed sprouted. The reaction of the scientific community was merciless. The tomato was immediately uprooted, packed in an airtight bag, and destroyed. The spot where it grew was dug up and treated with chemicals to kill any bacteria. The experiment was threatened by a single stupid act, but purity was restored. Hawaii. What do you imagine when you hear that word? Endless beaches, skyscraper hotels, surfing, and crowds of tourists in floral shirts. But just 27 kilometers from the bustling island of Kauai, the silhouette of another land is visible on the horizon. It looks just like the other islands of the archipelago: green hills, palm trees, sand. But this proximity is deceptive. This island is called Niihau, and to the rest of the world, it is known by another name, the Forbidden Island. This is not just a closed territory. This is a real-time capsule where the calendar froze in the middle of the 19th century. There are no paved roads, no running water, no shops, no internet, and none of the civilization we're used to. There is no police because they aren't needed, and no one pays rent for housing. But the price for this utopia is complete isolation from the outside world. Getting here is harder than getting in North Korea, because in Korea you can at least buy a tour, but on Niihau, tickets are not sold for any amount of money. The history of this strange place began in 1864. King Kama V of Hawaii sold the island to a Scottish widow, Elizabeth Sinclair, for $10,000 in gold. For that time, it was a huge sum, but the king set one condition that sounded like a sacred oath. The new owners had to promise to preserve the culture and traditions of the Hawaiian people intact. The Sinclair Robinson family kept their word, but they did it in a radical way. They simply dropped an iron curtain. More than 150 years have passed since then, and Niihau remains the private property of Elizabeth's descendants. Today, about 170 people live here. They are full-blooded Hawaiians living the lifestyle of their ancestors. They hunt, fish, and collect unique shells for necklaces. This is the only place on the planet where the Hawaiian language is the primary means of communication, and English is learned as a foreign language. There is no electrical grid, only solar panels that appeared quite recently. There are no cars. People move around on foot, by bicycle, or on horseback. The secrecy regime here is taken to the absolute. In 1952, when a polio epidemic broke out in Hawaii, the island's owners completely banned entry and exit. No one got sick, and this incident only convinced the owners. Isolation is salvation. Since then, the rules have only become stricter. Even if you're a millionaire or a world celebrity, you're not welcome here. There's a famous story about how legendary Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones wanted to fly to the island by helicopter. He offered any amount of money, but received a cold refusal. The Robinson family's traditions proved more important than the status of a rock star. An outsider can set foot on this shore only in one case: if they receive a personal invitation from the owners or one of the residents. But even residents have the right to invite guests only with approval from above. Tourists are only allowed to boat up to a certain beach for a couple of hours to go snorkeling. But going inland or communicating with locals is the strictest taboo. You will be watched. Venice, the city of romance, canals, carnival masks, and loving couples. Every year, millions of tourists flood St. Mark's Square to take beautiful photos. But most of them don't even suspect that if you stand on the main embankment and look towards the Lido with binoculars, you can see the dark silhouette of Small Island. It is located just a couple of kilometers from the luxurious palaces, but not a single gondolier, even for triple the fare, will agree to take you there. They cross themselves at the mere mention of this place and call it cursed. This is Poveglia, an island officially considered one of the scariest places on the planet. Historically, this patch of land turned into a real hell back in the Middle Ages, when Europe was choking on the bubonic plague. Venice, being a trading port, received ships from all over the world, and along with them, deadly contagion. City authorities made a cruel but necessary decision. Poveglia became a quarantine zone, or more precisely, a place of exile for the dying. Everyone who showed the slightest signs of illness was brought here. A ticket to this island was always one way. People died here by the thousands. Burial places quickly ran out, and bodies began to be simply burned in gigantic pyres that burned day and night, illuminating the lagoon with an ominous glow. Historians claim that during the epidemic, about 160,000 people perished here. This number is so huge that it spawned a horrifying legend that locals firmly believe. They say that the island's soil consists of 50% human ashes. The earth here is greasy, sticky, and an unnatural gray color. Fishermen still avoid the waters around Poveglia, fearing they might net not fish, but human bones polished by the water. It would seem that after such a nightmare, the island should have remained empty forever, but in 1922, a psychiatric hospital was opened here, and this decision turned a tragedy into a horror film. The building was constructed right on top of the bones, and patients, people with unstable minds, almost immediately began complaining of whispers, screams, and visions of burning people. But who believes the insane? Doctors simply increased drug doses, attributing everything to hallucinations. The main villain of this story became the chief physician of the clinic. According to rumors, this man was obsessed with finding a physical cause for madness. Within the walls of the hospital, away from prying eyes, he turned into a sadist. Without anesthesia and without observing sanitary standards, he conducted monstrous experiments, opened skulls with hand drills, used chisels, trying to correct the brains of his victims. Screams from the operating room echoed across the island, but they drowned in the fog of the lagoon. The end of this story came suddenly and mystically. The doctor who had tormented patients for years began to go mad himself. He claimed that the ghosts of the people he had tortured and the plague victims surrounded him. In a fit of madness, he climbed to the highest point of the island, the old bell tower, and threw himself down. Legend has it that the fall did not kill him instantly. Witnesses claim that as he lay on the ground, broken but alive, a thick white mist rose from the earth, enveloped his body, and suffocated him. The psychiatric clinic was closed in 1968. Since then, the island has been abandoned. The hospital building is slowly decaying. Roofs have collapsed, beds have rusted, and medical instruments still lie on the dusty floor. Italian authorities try to sell the island at auction or lease it long-term to build a luxury hotel. Buyers even appeared, but they fled the island after the very first night, refusing to explain the reasons. Rumor has it that something or someone tore the face of their daughter, requiring 14 stitches. You've probably seen this place in movies. In the film 007, Skyfall, James Bond meets his enemy in a dead, ruined city in the middle of the ocean. Many viewers were sure it was just expensive sets or high-quality computer graphics. But this place is real. It is located in the East China Sea, just 15 kilometers from Nagasaki. The official name of the island is Hashima, but the Japanese and the whole world know it by another, more formidable name, Gunkanjima, or Battleship Island. And if you look at its silhouette from afar, you'll understand why. The tall gray walls and palisade of concrete buildings make it resemble a huge warship drifting in the gray waves. Today, Hashima is the world's most famous ghost town. But just 50 years ago, it was the most densely populated place on planet Earth. Population density here was so extreme that Tokyo, compared to Hashima, seemed like a desert. On a patch of rock only 480 meters long and 160 meters wide, over 5,000 people were crammed. It was a real human anthill, a concrete labyrinth where people lived literally on top of each other. Why they lived there? For black gold. Beneath the island, deep under the seabed, lay rich coal deposits. The Mitsubishi Corporation turned the rock into an industrial monster. Miners descended into the hellish heat of the underwater shafts, while life thrived on the surface. To accommodate all the workers and their families, the first reinforced concrete high-rise buildings in Japan were built here. The island had everything: a school, a hospital, a cinema, swimming pools, shops, and even a cemetery. The only thing it didn't have was greenery. Hashima was called the island without greenery because every centimeter was paved in concrete. The end of this dystopia came instantly, like a gunshot. In 1974, coal became unprofitable. The world was switching to oil. The mines closed. The company announced there was no more work and cut off the water and electricity supply. What happened next resembled an emergency evacuation before disaster. People had no time to pack. The island emptied in just a few weeks. Residents abandoned furniture, appliances, and clothes. They sailed to the mainland, leaving behind their entire lives. If you get inside these buildings today, which by the way is deadly dangerous and illegal, you'll see a sight that chills the blood. It's frozen time. In apartments, dusty cups left half a century ago sit on tables. Calendars from 1974 hang on walls. In the school, open textbooks lie on desks, and deflated balls lie in the gym. It seems as if people just went out for lunch and vanished. Now, nature is slowly but surely devouring this concrete monument to industrialization. The island is exposed to all winds and the terrible typhoons that hit Japan annually. Salt water corrodes the reinforcement, balconies collapse, stairwells crumble under their own weight. That's why free access to Hashima is strictly forbidden. Tourists are only allowed onto a specially equipped path at the edge of the island, from where you can only look from afar at the dead windows. Going deeper into Battleship Island means signing your own death warrant. The buildings are in such disrepair that any loud sound or careless step could collapse the floor. New York, the city that never sleeps. A metropolis of glass and concrete where every square centimeter of land is worth millions of dollars. But right in the middle of the East River, between the Bronx and Rikers Island prison, lies a piece of land that looks like a set from an apocalyptic movie. This is North Brother Island. From ashore, it just seems like dense, overgrown forest. But if you look closely through the tree crowns, the empty eye sockets of windows from ruined buildings peer out. This is New York's rotting secret, a place where entry has been forbidden to everyone for over half a century. The history of this island is steeped in disease and despair. At the end of the 19th century, when New York was choking on epidemics, authorities needed a place to dump the unclean. North Brother became the ideal isolator. Riverside Hospital was built here, a place that sounded like a death sentence for many citizens. Patients with smallpox, typhus, tuberculosis, and leprosy were forcibly brought here. The ferries heading to the island were called death boats because passengers rarely returned. The most famous prisoner of this island was Mary Mallon, whom the world remembers as Typhoid Mary. She was the first asymptomatic carrier of typhoid fever in the USA. She didn't get sick herself, but while working as a cook, she infected hundreds of people through her signature desserts. Mary refused to believe she was dangerous and fiercely resisted doctors. In the end, she was forcibly confined on North Brother. She spent almost 30 years here in complete isolation until her death. They say her ghost still wanders near the ruins of the old building, cursing the doctors who deprived her of freedom. But diseases weren't the only thing tormenting this island. In 1904, one of the worst disasters in New York's history occurred off its shores. The steamship General Slocum caught fire and sank right at the water's edge. Waves washed over 1,000 bodies onto the island's beach, mostly women and children. Hospital staff turned into rescuers and undertakers, pulling the burn from the water. This tragedy forever stamped the island with a mark of death. In 1963, the hospital was finally closed. The staff left, leaving everything as it was: expensive x-ray equipment, furniture, books in the library, patients' personal files. Everything was left to rot. Over the decades, nature has taken a brutal revenge here. Aggressive ivy has completely engulfed the 3-story brick buildings. Trees have grown through roofs and floors, turning the hospital wards into a surreal forest. Today, North Brother Island is officially declared a bird sanctuary, but that's just a convenient pretext to keep people away. The island is under strict surveillance. The surrounding waters are patrolled by Coast Guard and New York police boats. Any attempt to approach the shore by kayak or boat results in immediate interception and arrest. Authorities claim the buildings are dilapidated and could collapse at the slightest breeze. But urban legends say the land there is still saturated with biological danger. It's a paradox. Standing on the island, you can hear the traffic noise from the Bronx and see the lights of Manhattan, but you are cut off from the world by an insurmountable wall of prohibition. Imagine a tropical island that looks like ordinary jungle on the coast of Myanmar. Greenery, water, silence. But this silence is deceptive. If you listen closely, you'll hear not bird song, but the heavy, guttural breathing of death lurking in the murky water. This is Ramree Island, and it is the only place on Earth that made it into the Guinness Book of Records with the most horrifying citation: greatest disaster caused by the animal kingdom. Here you won't find abandoned buildings or radioactive signs. The main threat of this island is alive, hungry, and perfectly adapted for killing. The masters of these swamps are saltwater crocodiles. These are not the lazy reptiles you've seen in the zoo. They are the largest terrestrial predators on the planet. They grow up to 7 meters in length, weigh as much as a passenger car, and possess the most powerful bite in the animal kingdom. For them, a human is not a threat, but just a slow, soft snack that walks right into their mouths. The legendary nightmare that made Ramree famous worldwide happened at the end of World War II. In February 1945, British troops cornered an elite unit of the Japanese Imperial Army. About 1,000 Japanese soldiers were pinned down on the shore. They were offered to surrender, but their code of honor forbade raising the white flag. The command made a fateful decision. Under the cover of night, cross 16 kilometers of mangrove swamps to link up with their main forces on the other side of the island. They thought the hardest part would be wading waist-deep in mud and evading British bullets. They were wrong. As soon as the sun set below the horizon, the swamp came alive. The smell of blood from wounded soldiers and the noise of 1,000 feet splashing through the water became a dinner bell for all the crocodiles in the area, and there were thousands. What happened that night was described by British naturalist Bruce Wright, who was in a boat nearby, as the most terrible sound a human could ever hear. In the pitch darkness of the mangrove forest, a massacre began. Human cries mixed with the crack of breaking bones and the dull thuds of powerful tails hitting the water. Japanese rifles were useless. Soldiers bogged down in the mud, couldn't run, and fired blindly into the darkness as jaws clamped onto their legs and torsos. Predators dragged them underwater one by one, methodically and mercilessly. This bloody orgy lasted several hours. British patrols lying in ambush on dry land listened in horror to the death screams of enemies being devoured alive. By dawn, the screams had stopped. When vultures began circling the swamp, the scale of the tragedy became clear. Of the 1,000 elite soldiers who entered those mangroves, only 20 people emerged alive on the other side. The rest, 980, disappeared into the stomachs of the reptiles. Most of the survivors were in deep shock, and some went mad from what they had seen. Today, Ramree Island is open for visits, but local guides flatly refuse to take tourists deep into the mangrove forests. The population of saltwater crocodiles here is still huge. They still lie in the murky water, looking like old logs, and wait. Any step from solid ground into the viscous mud could be your last. Brazil, the land of beaches, carnivals, and eternal celebration. But just 35 kilometers off the coast of São Paulo State lies an island that locals call the Green Hell. On maps, it is marked as Queimada Grande, but the whole world knows it by another name, Snake Island. From the water, it looks like an untouched tropical paradise. Dense greenery, rocky shores, azure sea. But this beauty is a perfect trap. This is the only place on the planet where humans are not at the top of the food chain. Reptiles rule here. Queimada Grande is a closed biological reserve, but it was closed not to save nature from people, but to save people from certain death. The island literally teems with one of the most dangerous creatures on Earth, the island bothrops, or golden lancehead viper. These creatures are endemic. They live only here and nowhere else. Stranded in isolation thousands of years ago, when sea levels rose and cut the island off from the mainland, they evolved into perfect killers. The population density of snakes here defies all laws of nature. Legends and old reports state that for every square meter of the island, there are between 1 and 5 venomous snakes. Just think about that arithmetic. You physically cannot take a step without stepping on a snake or being within striking distance of one hanging from a branch. Landing on the shore, you are never more than an arm's length away from a deadly bite. The venom of the island bothrops is a separate story of horror. Because there is no ground prey on the island, the snakes learn to hunt migratory birds. To catch a bird, the venom must act instantly, or the prey will fly away to die at sea. Therefore, the toxin of these snakes is 5 times more potent than that of their mainland relatives. It's a fast-acting cocktail that destroys flesh. The bite causes rapid necrosis of muscle tissue. Simply put, the human body literally begins to melt and rot alive around the wound, accompanied by gastrointestinal bleeding and kidney failure. Death comes in agony, and without anti-venom, there is no chance. The most horrifying page in the island's history is the fate of the lighthouse keeper. Until the 1920s, people tried to live here. A lighthouse stood on the island, tended by a keeper's family, husband, wife, and 3 children. They lived in constant fear, turning their home into a sealed fortress. But one night, someone forgot to close a window or a vent. That mistake was enough. According to legend, dozens of snakes began to crawl into the house at night. Waking to the hissing and screams of their bitten children, the family panicked and tried to flee. Their goal was to reach the boat at the dock, but to get to the shore, they had to go through the forest. In the darkness, in panic, they ran straight through a writhing carpet of bodies. It was a race through a gauntlet of executioners. When a naval vessel arrived with supplies a few days later, sailors found the entire family dead. They lay on the path not far from the boat, their bodies covered with dozens of bites. The snakes didn't just kill them, they literally reconquered their territory. After this incident, the Brazilian government made the only correct decision. The lighthouse was automated, and the island was declared a forbidden zone. We live in an era where every square meter of the planet is photographed by satellites, and any point in the world can be reached within a day. But in the Bay of Bengal, there is an island that remains a blank spot on the map of humanity. This is North Sentinel Island, a place where globalization shatters against arrowheads. Here lives a tribe that has rejected contact with the outside world for 60,000 years. They are direct descendants of the first humans who left Africa, and they have remained in the Stone Age by their own choice. The Sentinelese are perhaps the most isolated and the most xenophobic community on Earth. We know almost nothing about them. Not their language, not their exact numbers, not their beliefs. We're not even sure if they know how to make fire. There's a theory that they only preserve smoldering embers from accidental fires caused by lightning. But one thing we know for sure, they want to be left alone, and they're willing to kill for that right. Any outsider is a demon or an enemy to be destroyed immediately. The history of contact with the island is a chronicle of violence. When, after the 2004 tsunami, an Indian helicopter flew over the island to drop humanitarian aid, a warrior ran out of the jungle and started shooting arrows at the Iron Bird. They don't need our food, our medicine, or our pity. In 2006, 2 Indian fishermen, Sundar Raj and Pundit Tiwari, were illegally crabbing near the edge of the forbidden zone. At night, after drinking too much palm wine, they fell asleep in their boat. The anchor dragged, and the current slowly carried them straight towards the shore of death. Other fishermen shouted at them, tried to wake them, but it was too late. In the morning, the boat was washed onto the sand. The Sentinelese didn't ask questions. They simply hacked the intruders to death with axes and buried them in shallow graves right on the beach. When the Coast Guard tried to retrieve the bodies by helicopter, they were met with a hail of arrows. The rotor wash from the helicopter blew the sand away, exposing the bodies of the dead, but they were never recovered. But the most high-profile and tragic case happened quite recently, in November 2018. A 26-year-old American missionary, John Allen Chau, decided it was his destiny to bring Christianity to this island. He prepared for years, got vaccinations, and trained. John bribed local fishermen to take him to the edge of the reefs, then transferred to a kayak. His first attempt ended with a warning. An arrow pierced the Bible he was holding. John retreated, but returned the next day. He walked onto the shore, raised his hands, and shouted, "My name is John. I love you, and Jesus loves you." These were his last words. Fishermen watching from afar with binoculars saw the Aborigines put a rope around the American's neck and drag his lifeless body across the sand into the jungle. Indian police were at a dead end. They couldn't file a murder case. The Sentinelese are not Indian citizens in the usual sense. They are sovereign and not subject to the criminal code. To storm the island and retrieve John's body would have meant starting a war with people who have bows against automatic weapons. It would have been a massacre. A police boat approached the shore, and they saw the warriors lined up for battle. The police turned around and left. John Allen Chau's body remained on the island forever. Japan is often associated with cyberpunk, high technology, and strange subcultures. But Miyakojima Island is not science fiction. It's a harsh reality that looks like a set for a post-apocalyptic horror film or the game STLKR. If you look at old photos of local weddings or school lessons, you might think it's some kind of art performance. People in festive kimonos or school uniforms, but with gas masks on their faces. However, this is not fashion or a flash mob. It's the only way to survive. Miyakojima is in the Izu archipelago, about 180 kilometers from Tokyo. In the center of the island rises Mount Oyama. But unlike other volcanoes that kill with fire and lava, Oyama kills invisibly and silently. It constantly breathes. From the Earth's depths, a continuous stream of sulfur dioxide, a caustic poisonous gas, erupts. When mixed with moisture in your lungs, it turns into sulfuric acid. The most terrible page in the island's history opened in July 2000. Oyama woke up. The series of eruptions was so powerful, and the concentration of poisonous gas became so critical that the Japanese government made an unprecedented decision: complete evacuation. Helicopters and ships evacuated absolutely all residents, about 3,600 people. For 5 long years, Miyakojima became a ghost island. Houses overgrown with grass, shop windows covered with a layer of gray ash, and only the poisoned wind roamed the empty streets. It would seem that history should have ended there. Who in their right mind would want to return to a gas chamber? But the Japanese are a nation with an incredible attachment to their native land. People demanded permission to return home. And in 2005, the government relented, but with one strict condition. Every resident, from the elderly to children, must carry a gas mask with them. Always, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is your pass to life. Going out for bread, going to school, or going to sleep, you must know where your mask is. Life on Miyakojima today is existence on a powder keg. The entire island is studded with sensors and loudspeakers. The warning system works like Swiss clockwork. As soon as the wind changes and a sulfur cloud covers a residential area, the sensors light up red and sirens begin to howl across the island. This sound chills you to the bone. At that moment, life stops. Farmers drop their tools, drivers kill their engines, children stop their games. Everyone must put on their masks immediately. Hesitation risks severe poisoning, pulmonary edema, and death. For tourists, this place has become a kind of extreme thrill attraction. Souvenir shops here sell gas masks in different colors and sizes, as if they were beach hats. But laughter catches in your throat when you step off the ferry. The first thing that hits your nose is the smell of rotten eggs. The smell of sulfur, which soaks into your clothes and hair in minutes. The air here has a metallic taste. Despite the risk, about 2,500 people live on the island now. They're used to the sirens. They're used to their cars rusting 3 times faster due to the acidic environment. And they're used to wearing a bag with a gas mask on their belt. Bikini. For most people, this word is associated with women's swimwear and beach fashion. But few remember that this swimsuit got its name from this very atoll, because the effect of its appearance on the public was compared to the explosion of an atom bomb. And that is the darkest and most cynical metaphor in history. Bikini Atoll, lost in the Pacific Ocean, looks like an ideal desktop wallpaper. Snow-white sand, palm trees leaning towards the azure water, and absolute tranquility. But this is beauty that kills. It is a nuclear paradise, poisoned for millennia to come. The history of paradise turning into hell began in 1946. The U.S. military came to the local inhabitants and asked them to temporarily leave their homes for the good of all humanity and to end all wars. The Micronesians believed them and left, thinking they would return in a couple of months. They didn't know that their homeland would become the planet's main nuclear test site. Over 12 years, from 1946 to 1958, 23 nuclear devices were detonated here. This tiny patch of land endured a hell that no city in the world has ever dreamed of. The most monstrous moment in the atoll's history was the test codenamed Castle Bravo on March 1st, 1954. This wasn't just a bomb, it was a monster. Scientists miscalculated. The explosion was 3 times more powerful than planned. The fireball reached a size of 7 kilometers, literally vaporizing part of the island and coral reef, leaving behind a crater 2 kilometers in diameter. The blast yield was 15 megatons. That's 1,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Radioactive ash, resembling dirty snow, fell on neighboring inhabited islands, where children played with it, not understanding it was death falling from the sky. Today, decades later, Bikini remains one of the most radioactive places on Earth. But the danger here isn't a Geiger counter crackling on the beach. The air is relatively clean, and you can even walk on the sand without a protective suit. The trap lies in life itself. The soil and water are saturated with cesium-137. This isotope works like an invisible killer. The palm trees that grew after the blast look healthy, but their fruit is poison. Coconuts accumulate radiation in lethal doses. Local coconut crabs, a delicacy elsewhere in the ocean, are here walking containers of radioactive waste. If you eat a local fruit or drink local water, you literally swallow a reactor. In the 1970s, the U.S. attempted to return the residents to the island, declaring it safe. It was a fatal mistake. A few years later, doctors discovered that radiation levels in the bodies of the returnees were off the scale. Women gave birth to children with mutations. Men died of cancer. People were urgently evacuated again. Since then, Bikini has been uninhabited. Now, divers are sometimes allowed there to see the ghost fleet. Lying on the lagoon floor are huge warships, including the aircraft carrier USS Saratoga and the flagship of the Japanese fleet, Nagato, which were used as targets for nuclear strikes. They lie in the darkness, huge and radioactive. Bikini is a monument to human madness, a place where nature has recovered outwardly, but inside, it is broken at the genetic level. It's a paradise where you can watch the sunset, but you cannot pick an apple because the price of that apple is your life. San Francisco, the city of fog, the Golden Gate Bridge, and Silicon Valley. If you go to the California coast on a clear day and look west, you can see the jagged silhouettes of rocks jutting from the ocean. These are the Farallon Islands. Local Native Americans called them the Islands of the Dead and believed the souls of the departed went there. They had no idea how prophetic that name would be. Today, this place is one of America's darkest secrets, a radioactive dump right under the nose of a million-plus metropolis. In the mid-20th century, as the nuclear race was just gaining momentum, the military and scientists faced a problem: what to do with radioactive waste. The logic of that time was frighteningly simple. The ocean is big, it can handle anything. There was even an unofficial slogan: the solution to pollution is dilution. The Farallon Islands, located just 48 kilometers from San Francisco, were chosen as the ideal garbage can. Between 1946 and 1970, this area turned into a graveyard for nuclear mistakes. U.S. Navy barges regularly went to sea and dumped their deadly cargo. The statistics are horrifying. On the seabed around the islands rest more than 47,000 55-gallon steel drums of radioactive waste. And that's only what is documented. These drums contain spent materials from laboratories, contaminated protective clothing, tools, and chemicals. But the scariest part of this story is the carelessness with which the operation was carried out. Many drums didn't sink immediately due to the air inside. What did the military do? They shot them with rifles and machine guns to puncture the hull and send them to the bottom. The radioactive liquid spilled into the water before the container even touched the seabed. Today, half a century later, salt water has done its work. The steel has rusted, and the drums have turned into sieves. No one knows for sure how much radiation has already entered the ecosystem and how much more will. They cannot be raised. The risk of destroying the fragile shells is too great. It's a ticking time bomb that cannot be defused. The irony of fate is that these very waters are one of the most biologically active places on the planet. The Farallon Islands are the heart of the so-called Red Triangle. Here lives the largest population of great white sharks in the world. These giant predators come here to hunt elephant seals and fur seals. Imagine the picture: the ocean's greatest predators, ancient killing machines, circling in the depths of darkness among rusty drums glowing with invisible death. It sounds like a script for a trash horror movie about radioactive sharks versus San Francisco, but it's reality. Scientists who work on the island in shifts, and they're the only people allowed there, live in an old house and try not to think about what lies beneath the water surface. The islands are completely closed to the public. The official reason is to protect the unique nature and bird nesting grounds. But the unofficial reason, which everyone knows but prefers to keep silent about, lies on the seabed. Scotland, land of misty mountains, deep lakes, ancient castles, and monster legends. Tourists come here for the tranquility and grandeur of northern nature. But in the picturesque Sea Loch of Gruinard, just a kilometer from the coast, lies a small, oval-shaped green island. From the mainland, it looks like an ideal spot for a picnic or secluded walk. But for decades, locals have looked at this patch of land with superstitious dread, and on maps, it was marked in red as a zone of biological danger. This is Gruinard Island, the island that the British government deliberately killed in order to learn how to kill others. The history of this place turned into horror at the height of World War II in 1942. British intelligence was seeking a way to stop Nazi Germany at any cost. In secret laboratories, a plan was developed, Operation Vegetarian. The idea was monstrous in its simplicity. Drop cattle feed cakes contaminated with anthrax on Germany. Cattle would eat them, get infected, the meat would reach people, and an epidemic capable of wiping out millions would begin. But before using this doomsday weapon, it had to be tested. The military bought Gruinard from its owner and imposed a strict secrecy regime. 80 sheep were brought to the island. They were tethered at different points, cameras were set up, and they withdrew to a safe distance. Then a small bomb was exploded over the island. A brown cloud of dust slowly settled on the grass and the animal's wool. In this dust was strain volume 14578, a particularly aggressive form of anthrax. The results exceeded the scientists' darkest expectations. The sheep began dying in 3 days. Death was agonizing and swift. Scientists in chemical protection suits, looking like aliens, collected the carcasses, threw them into a crevice, and blew up the rock to bury the evidence under tons of stone. But they underestimated the enemy. Anthrax is the perfect killer. Its spores do not die. They can sleep in the soil for decades, withstanding cold, heat, and time, waiting for a new victim. When the war ended, the military realized their mistake. The island was so contaminated that simply stepping on its grass meant signing your own death warrant. Gruinard was fenced with barbed wire, and grim skull and crossbone signs were placed around its perimeter. Government property, landing prohibited, ground contaminated. For 48 years, the island became a dead zone. Even birds that accidentally landed there could spread the contagion to the mainland. The situation only changed in the 1980s, and thanks to eco-terrorists, a group called the Dark Harvest Commando infiltrated the island, collected a bucket of contaminated soil, and left it at the gates of a military base on the mainland with a note: "Clean up the island, or we will scatter this soil across the cities." It was blackmail, but it worked. The government realized Gruinard was a ticking bomb. In 1986, the largest decontamination operation in history began. The island was literally drowned in poison to kill another poison. The entire territory was doused with a mixture of seawater and formaldehyde. A total of 280 tons of chemicals were used. The top layer of soil was also removed from the most dangerous hotspots. In 1990, to prove it was safe, the Minister of Defense personally visited the island, removed a protective sign, and declared Gruinard clean. They even introduced a new batch of sheep, which, fortunately, survived. We have come to the finale, and hear the jokes about sharks, snakes, or ghosts end. If the previous 12 islands frighten you with local dangers, number 13 is a threat on a planetary scale. Welcome to Vozrozhdeniya Island, a place now divided between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, a place that officially did not exist on Soviet maps. A ghost town, Aralsk 7. At the height of the Cold War, this was a top-secret military installation. Here, in the middle of the endless Aral Sea, lived 1,500 people. The best microbiologists, military personnel, and their families. They had schools, parks, and discos. And a few kilometers from the residential zone, behind barbed wire, was the field complex, the world's largest biological weapons testing laboratory. Here they tested humanity's worst nightmares: bubonic plague, tularemia, brucellosis, smallpox, and typhus. But the main achievement of the local scientists was the anthrax strain 836. This was not just a disease, but a combat agent, genetically modified to bypass the effects of any known vaccines and antibiotics. It was the perfect doomsday weapon, capable of wiping out entire megacities in a matter of days. The disaster began when the Soviet Union started to crumble. In 1988, under pressure from the West, Moscow ordered an urgent disposal of the weapon stockpiles. It wasn't disposal, it was a panic flight. The military loaded hundreds of tons of combat anthrax spores into stainless steel tanks, doused them with bleach, and simply buried them in the sandy soil of the island. They thought the bleach would kill everything, and the sea would forever hide the secret. They were wrong twice. First, anthrax spores are incredibly resilient. They can wait for centuries in the ground for their moment, fearing neither heat nor chemicals. The bleach only weakened them, but did not destroy them. And second, an ecological catastrophe occurred. The Aral Sea began to dry up rapidly. The water receded, and what was once an isolated island became a peninsula. The natural water barrier that protected the world from this biological hell vanished. Today, Vozrozhdeniya Island is connected to the mainland by a dry isthmus. Now anyone can go there, and anyone can leave. Jackals, foxes, rodents, and saigas roam freely across the former test site. They dig burrows right into the burial grounds, tearing open old, rusted containers. Local stalkers and looters sneak in for scrap metal, cutting pipes in contaminated laboratories, not understanding what they're bringing home on their boots and in their lungs. In 2002, American military specialists came to check the condition of the burial sites. They were horrified. Of the 11 burial pits checked, 6 contained live, active spores of weaponized anthrax. The containers had depressurized. The poison is seeping into the groundwater, and the wind carries contaminated dust across the dried-up seabed. Vozrozhdeniya Island is the world's largest unmanaged biological weapons depot. It lies in the open air, unguarded except by the scorching sun. Scientists say that it would take just one infected rat running to the mainland, or one looter deciding to dig up an interesting barrel, to trigger a chain reaction leading to a new pandemic. This is a true Pandora's box, its lid already slightly open, and we're just hoping for a miracle that nothing crawls out. This place is a monument to human madness, still ticking, counting down the time to a possible apocalypse.